We
Hi,
are
Hannah.
here today with Healthy Table Talk, and because we're so new in this process, we don't have like a fun welcome song yet, but no worries, nobody, we will not sing to you. All to say, like, hopefully one day we'll get like this nice little, like, inclusive, like, I don't know, add on. But for now, you have us welcoming you and thanking you for joining us in our weekly Healthy Table Talk. And we talk about different wellness and health related topics. If you've not watched one of our episodes yet, Shannon is a host of Having a Mom Moment podcast. The link is below. And I'm a registered dietitian, founder of this channel, and helping people create consistency in their health journey, focusing on well being and disease prevention. And all to say, I love to fight weight stigma. So those are the conversations we're having. Please help yourself to the past episodes where, you can hear a little bit more. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition and well-being over the age of 40, or at least going into perimenopause or potentially now in menopause. And truthfully, I've not quite experienced it myself. I can say I'm, 39, kind of seeing different symptoms change here and there. But I have researched it enough because most of my clients are right in that that's kind of when they seek that support because of all those changes. So definitely looked into it, researched, and I believe in giving people realistic realistic tips and tools and understanding that you can take into your lifestyle, meaning I'm not going to kind of steer you into the deeply holistic ways of maybe finding certain supplements or certain strict things. I really want people to be able to implement something to then get that shift on some level, or relief, I should say. So how are you today, Shannon?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
I'll just go with that. I'm great too. And if you guys don't know, Shannon and I don't talk before this, so we actually get a chance to catch up too. So that's what that is. Oh,
We're in
good.
like real time situations over here. Things are happening. Sorry about the light.
It's all good. I'm in a cube. I'm in a box right now. So first off, talking about health over 40, it's always a topic because we feel so freaking confused and vulnerable as to like, where is this coming from? What's happening? And what I hear most often and what I notice too is like, what I used to do doesn't work anymore. Do you have
Yeah.
any things that you notice changing or that maybe has brought this topic to your attention?
So I don't know what's happening with me, but I can say, I'm in my mid to late 30s. I'm looking at 38 this year. I had a baby at 35. A lot of life has happened, and I'm just noticing that my body is responding to the way that I have been living a little bit differently. And I'm like, is
Yeah.
it a me problem? Like, what am I doing? Is this just when things start to slow down? So I am definitely, it's got my attention.
Okay. That's exactly it. I hear that so much. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because, yes, I do believe you'll have some takeaways that can help you. But I also want to talk about the elephant in the room that most people jump over because as entrepreneurs, we're taught to poke at your pain points, which I don't care to ever do. So you won't really see me flaunting that in my marketing, but they will poke at that pain point. But why they do that is to get you and to get your attention. However, here's what I believe is not talked about: the normalcy in aging and the reality and the why behind these changes in biological terms. Like, we are done with the fertilization process as women. We will have hormonal changes. It is a natural part of aging. Does it freaking suck? Yes. But it can't be reversed. We're trying to fix something that isn't designed to be fixed. And if you look at it that way, then it's like, okay, I can maybe think about this in a way that's like, what does it mean to manage, or what is the best I can do to decrease or depress some of the symptoms of the biological changes? But like, I've heard people say, like, like, I won't have it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to let it get me. That kind of attitude. And it's like, it's not that. It's that this, just as like we wouldn't expect a 30 to 50-year-old body to look like a 16-year-old body, it's just a biological change of our evolution as a human. And therefore, understanding the changes can look different rather than trying to control the changes. Do
Yeah,
you see the difference?
totally. Totally. Yes. I can see where it's hard though too, because everywhere we look, right? Like nobody's aging.
Oh my God, right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have all the quick fixes. I know it's
Yeah.
like we could all lift our eyebrows a little more for whatever. But in that is where you have to really pick and choose what you're putting into your mindset and your brain and what you're looking at and how it's making you feel and all of that. So it's real. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So I don't know, like I guess today just kind of talk about some of those changes and then we can talk about things that you guys can do and some takeaways and probably close up shop. We like to stay within 30 minutes so you can know what to expect when you come to listen to these episodes. But I do want to ask, you have any random questions that you want to bring to the table?
Ooh. No, just besides like what any specifics, because my husband and I were actually at Costco at lunch and tempted to get that pizza, Hannah. But
I don't blame you.
um, what?
I don't blame you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was like, but I know there's something at home. Anyway,
Mhm,
but we were looking in the vitamin aisle, and it was like,
mhm,
remember like 5 years ago when our bodies just used to do the things that they were supposed to do without having to take. I think he was looking at fiber, and I now need to introduce ferritin according to my doctor. And it's just like,
mhm,
remember when we didn't have to think about this stuff, and it just
mhm.
functioned or appeared to
Yeah.
function normally. So yeah, any tips that you've got or specific
Mhm,
things that we can bring
mhm.
in, especially women, would be
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, when we don't have our period anymore, we can stop obsessing about iron for a minute.
I'm looking forward to that. I know there's things that come with it, but I'm looking forward to that.
Right, right. So, all to say, perimenopause is your body adjusting to the changes as they start to happen. But when you actually hit that menopause state, you could decrease your estrogen levels up to 95%. So, I mean,
Mm,
it's literally taking you into a completely different state of being. And that is where most of the symptoms come in. And that's where people start to like want to control their hormones. And that's what a lot of people are selling, balance your hormones and blah, blah, blah. However, I just want to remind you that your hormones fluctuate all day, every day. They're different in the morning, different at night. They are a domino effect from other hormones. So by monitoring your hormones, it's rarely accurate as to if they are where they quote unquote should be. And I hate to say that because I know like we want that fix. And there are times that we can supplement to create different, like I said, manage some symptoms. But in reality, for the most part, our bodies aren't really out of whack. What's out of whack is managing our well being, which create a domino effect into our hormone production. Do you see that again?
mm,
Okay. So
I'm
that's what
hearing
we're
you.
going to talk. So we're going to talk a little bit about today. With the decrease in estrogen, though, you'll notice your GI changing, like what bothers you, what you can eat, what your satisfaction levels are, things like that. Your metabolism will change because of there's something called a resting metabolic rate, which would basically be the amount of calories you're burning at a resting state. That slows down. So now just being at resting, you're burning less than you did when you were younger or pre-menopause. Um, Sleep changes happen as our hormones change, which I think is probably some of the worst because lack of sleep creates its own amount of symptoms that we have to deal with. And then where our body stores fat starts to change. So, it's one because of our lifestyle changes, what retirement looks like compared to what our lifestyle was raising littles or when we were more active, involved in the volleyball or whatever that looks like compared to now more sedentary hobbies. It's all, again, a process of evolution, but those changes can really then affect your overall lifestyle. And therefore, what the biggest thing that happens with where your body stores fat and your metabolism changing and your metabolic rate changing, all of that, is that we don't have this clear, like, red flag as to when those changes happen and how severe those changes are. So we continue our habits as is, or if it's like, weekly this or pizza, or I normally have 3 pieces, or, like it's just you continue your eating habits, but you don't realize that those underlying changes are exactly happening for your metabolism, which just makes a change in your weight or your body image, which therefore we feel like this pressure to control, which often leads to over restrict. And I'm so sorry to say, but the worst time to try to lose weight is during menopause and even during perimenopause, because your body is doing everything it can to resist that weight loss in that time. So you're better
Wow.
off going through that process and then really focusing on your weight, but also having the awareness and knowledge that we're about to talk about today to go through that in your healthiest way possible, choosing wellness and well-being and your health journey rather than the comfort of the stress and the lack of sleep. And those
Mm.
things can really create the shift towards a more positive experience. So now more than ever, I'm going to kind of go through these things that matter. And this is stuff that's not entirely earth shattering or like a breaking glass moment, but I want you to think of it differently. And that's what I think is like jumped over. People hear it, but they're not really thinking of it in the perspective that can create the implementation. And everything I'm about to talk about today, I deep dive into in the Wholesome Collective. The Wholesome Collective is my membership where we really focus on creating consistency and well being. And these are just little points that we're talking about all the time. So, now more than ever, paying attention to managing stress. Because when you have that cortisol release, it stores your weight in your midsection for your protection, but it also surges glucose to say, there's an emergency or you're stressed, here's some energy. And then if you're actually sedentary, you're just going to store that. And therefore, that happens over and over and over. But I want you to think about what stress is to you, because we've talked about this in past episodes, but not only is stress like, oh, I'm so upset about this situation, it can also be your mindset playing negative self-talk. It can also be your continuously overwhelming yourself with a to-do list or a people pleasing and always helping others, or this urgency to fill your calendar, whatever. It changes for everybody. It might be trauma that happened years ago that's sitting on your heart that just keeps hitting that trigger, but you haven't quite figured out how to process it. All to say, it's not what it is, it's knowing that awareness for you so you can manage it. And the ways to manage it are, we deep dive into that. I'm sure like it's going to be approached in our discussions at some point. But managing your stress just means, yes, you can look to avoid it. So, like knowing that you can't watch certain shows or knowing that you shouldn't be reading emails from someone, but avoiding it is really hard. But knowing that the cortisol release is the problem, how can you improve your cortisol? So it's like if you know you feel stressed, which means you just feel anxious or upset or impatient, or just, I think we've all felt something, that feeling, the ways, what works for you to decrease that cortisol, increase those happy hormones. That's it. Because the more cortisol surging in your body throughout your whole day, every day, all week, so on, is more of a problem towards your sleep, towards your, weight retention around your waist, towards storing it altogether. It doesn't help your slowing metabolism. So now more than ever, getting in and like, I think I hear too people being like, I don't have to raise my kids anymore. That was also so stressful. I don't have that. So if they're in that empty nester, it's like, is empty nesting stressful for you? I mean, you don't have to be chasing kids to feel it. It could be missing
Mm.
kids. Like, it just looks different.
Yeah. Or the feeling like you need to be doing something, when you don't have, you're like, okay, I'm missing
Progress.
something, or
Yeah.
I should be productive. I should be doing that. Like that is still a kind of stress if you
Yeah.
subscribe to it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I actually forgot about that one. Productivity is huge. Like, I should clean my house, or I should be working on this, or I should. Yes, address a thing. My thing is avoiding hard conversations. That stresses me out when I know it needs to happen and I just avoid it, and that can like weigh on me for a long time. That's all.
Mm,
That's all. Um, okay, so that. The other thing I want to talk about is paying attention to what knowing now your estrogen is declining or has declined, depending where you're at. So often people will go to talk about their symptoms with a doctor or whatever, and I'm not saying I'm a doctor by any means, and this is not medical advice. However, hormone therapy is often what the option is, and in some cases that may be your best option given the severity of your symptoms. But when it comes to hot flashes and a few other things, as you've heard of soy relating to estrogen, have you?
a little bit.
Okay, see, that's always it. People don't quite know.
Yeah.
Soy products, yes, can mimic estrogen, which was marketed by people that maybe twisted the research some to be a bad thing. But in reality, soy and foods like tofu is actually researched to be proven to decrease your risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. I'm going to explain why right now. So, when you're eating soy, it has phytoestrogens. And actually, when your estrogen decreases, that's your body's biological way to actually protect you from breast cancer at that point in your life when you don't need it to breastfeed anymore and you don't need it for periods. It is now not necessary. And as you know, estrogen can contribute to breast cancer. By the way, if you are a victim of breast cancer, by no means am I saying that you or it's your fault. I'll like just throw that disclaimer out. All to say, you have these plant estrogens, and now when you're eating things, so you can call them phytoestrogens. Phyto means plant. They are not actual hormone. They mimic estrogen. You have your cell has receptors. Certain hormones fit into their appropriate receptor. And your plant estrogen, which is an isoflavin, so not an actual hormone, can fit into the receptor that your hormone estrogen can. People will say that's a bad thing because it looks like it's increasing, your estrogen. However, what that's doing is it docks into that estrogen receptor. And because it's a plant, so phytoestrogen, it actually has a much weaker effect on your cells than your hormone estrogen, which our body produces estrogen, or we consume it from things like dairy milk, which is breast milk from a cow. And so I know when it's put that way, it's kind of weird, but it is. Therefore, it has hormones, just like a nursing mother would have more hormones in their body. Same, same. So, all to say, it is a weakening effect on the cell rather than your actual hormone. So, when you're taking hormone therapy, it is then an actual hormone estrogen. So, it has a stronger effect, which helps with your symptoms, but therefore doesn't help decrease your risk of breast cancer. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, that's fascinating, actually. Thank you for taking me back to biology class or chemistry class. Where are we
Oh,
at in the
yeah, but
sciences?
wait,
Thank you.
dietetics was one class away from pre-med. So I was in OChem, anatomy,
All of
physiology, all
them.
the things. But
Yeah.
all to say, when it comes to soy products, they are actually proven in a lot of positive ways when it comes to even if you are a breast cancer survivor consuming soy, and then with your risk for mortality and it's good stuff. Anyways, let's talk more about that too. And I know like it's a controversial topic. I'm just out here saying my stance is from what I see from the research. And again, because I sell no supplements, I have no gain from the recommendations that I'm making. So now let's talk nutrition when it comes to health over 40, because this is the tricky part that people overthink because they associate weight and health. And when you associate weight and health, you start to only eat for your weight, but that doesn't entirely say that's approaching your health. And therefore, you can be losing weight and not touching your risk of cancer, not touching your risk of diabetes, or potentially increasing your risk for those things. And that's where I get really excited to talk to this because what is marketed to women over 40 specifically is low carb, decrease carb, no carb, low carb, high protein, high protein, high protein. But potentially fuel on fire for diabetes. And that is where, again, people aren't talking about that because they don't know or understand diabetes. They only know that eating carbohydrates affects how your blood sugars are. But when it comes to your beta cells, they're actually really sensitive to saturated fats. And if your beta cells are damaged, that means you're producing less insulin. And if you're producing
Mm.
less insulin, you don't have as much opportunity for insulin to open your cells, which allows glucose into your blood cells or into your cells out of your blood. That's how it manages your high and low blood sugars. So that in over time can be fuel on fire. And when I have more time, I like to dive deeper into that. So I hate to just skim over it, but it is really important to realize that low carb maybe helps with your weight management, but it's likely not long term. So therefore, if you're losing weight quickly because of probably not eating enough overall, you're losing your muscle mass. And your muscle mass is so stinking important when you're in premenopause, perimenopause, or menopause. It's just insane. And that's where once you lose that, but you gain weight back, it's near impossible to lose weight because you don't have muscle working for you anymore.
Mm.
And you don't have that lean, quick access to lose quick weight. Okay, so all to say, nutrition. There's a lot of things. Okay. So nutrition is not so much about low carb, it's about which carb. And carbs have fiber or no fiber. That's it. It's not that complicated. There is fiber in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, some starches, beans, lentils. But with those carbohydrates that have fiber, you're not always digesting that fiber. That's what helps keeps things moving. But it actually improves your metabolism. It improves your satiety, so you naturally eat less. And actually, if you eat those healthy carbs at night, you will feel less hungry in the morning. It's like how your blood sugar is relating. The fact that, yes, you actually are eating carbohydrates, your blood sugar responding with that slow release versus carbohydrates with no fiber. So that's where your cakes and pizzas and pretzels and all that come in. So when people say low carb, they're not talking about all of them. They're just like, let's just amp your protein. Here's the best thing. Yes, women over 40 do need more protein because they're losing muscle mass at an incredible fast rate than when they did when they were younger. But carbohydrates with fiber also are high in protein.
Mm.
So by prioritizing that fiber, you're also increasing your protein and you're not sacrificing protein. So instead of obsessing about like eggs and meat and dairy for your protein, if you focus on your fiber, you would just get lots of good fiber, which is good for your colon cancer risk, your breast cancer risk, your satiety, your fullness, and then also your immune system as it creates something called butyrate. And butyrate is a beautiful short chain fatty acid that's really important and only produced through eating fiber. But you're also getting that protein. And the other thing I want to say is that foods like tofu, which again is soy, are protein. So I'm not saying you have to eat one way or the other. It's that when we're talking about disease prevention, it's understanding how foods help you prevent disease, not as surface as like macronutrients. Does this have protein? Does this have carbs? Like it's deeper than that. Paying attention to the protein that helps you fight disease and prevent diabetes rather than just going high carb, low carb, or
Mhm.
whatever, high protein, low carb, sorry.
Mhm.
Also I'm sorry, do you have anything to say?
No, I
I
just
get
wanted to be
passionate.
crystal clear in my own understanding. So we're saying focusing on your fruits and your veggies and you're getting the whole shebang and then mix some tofu in there because that's good too.
Yeah, but you're missing the most important part that I didn't stress, beans and legumes. Black
Okay.
beans, garbanzo beans or chickpeas, white beans or cannellini beans, lentils, red lentils, brown lentils, whole grains, quinoa, sorghum, popcorn. Yes, popcorn is whole grain, kind of
Mm.
like a fiber protein option. Um, Oats. And when we're living in a world that's screaming no gluten, I like to question, why are you not tolerating the gluten? Is it actually the gluten's fault? Likely not. It's more so improving your gut health through things like the butyrate that I just talked about. So, so yeah, fruits and veggies are great, but really the fiber and protein comes in nuts and seeds, whole grains, beans, lentils.
I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
Mhm. That's a great point. Thank you. So that's where lentils, my gosh, a couple lentils, we're talking 15 to 20 grams of protein. That could be a lentil stew. I've done like lentil burgers or black bean burgers, right? You've heard all of that. And everyone's like, oh, that's just a meat substitute. No, it's actually an opportunity to increase your fiber while not sacrificing your protein.
Yeah.
And
Not to
this is
plug
stuff that
your
I'm literally
community.
teaching all the time in the Wholesome Collective. Like,
I was
it's
gonna
not like I'm
say,
expecting, like, go do it. It's like, no, we are literally learning how to do this.
yeah.
So, as I talked about your importance of your muscle mass, that's where I bring in the strength training. And a lot of women are like so used to doing cardio. Cardio is important for your heart health, so that's great. But strength training to gain back that muscle or keep what you do have is really important. And we don't need as much protein as we think when it comes to that. So, eating protein at every meal for sure. And when you start looking at protein, when you look at like beans and nuts and seeds and things like that, it's very generous. We forget that there's
Mm,
protein in broccoli. There's protein in seeds, pumpkin seeds, hemp hearts. Like you start to learn a whole new way of like, I didn't even associate that because the dairy industry and the meat industry are like, here's protein, here's calcium,
yeah.
which we're going to talk about now. So yes, strength training, it doesn't have to be at a gym. You can look options up online. You can, create something on your own, push-ups and lunges. There's a lot of options, but keeping that muscle mass is going to help with your overall that metabolic rate that we talked about.
Mm,
Um, Mentioned calcium. So when it comes to supplements, to each their own. And I know wild yams has some progesterone benefits where if you're having the effects of low progesterone, I've heard wild yams can be helpful with that. But for the most part, again, I don't necessarily think those things need to be fixed. If we pay attention to our cortisol and our sleep and our overall happy hormone and just ease, it can actually domino effect the most. Um, Vitamin D is, though, in reality, I live in the Midwest, you live in the Midwest, and we don't get a full year of like actual sunshine. So, vitamin D supplementation, 1 to 2,000 I use. But if you're not getting enough calcium, vitamin D and calcium work cohesively to help with your bone health. So, calcium doesn't always have the same benefit when you get it from a supplement because our kidneys are a beautiful thing, like we talked about last week, filter out extra vitamins and minerals that we're not using at that time, which is good because that's how it manages our blood levels. So when you're taking a large dose of calcium, you're likely excreting it for what you don't need at that time. The best way to get your calcium is to eat it in doses throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be in milk, which again, if you love milk, go for it. But when it comes to disease prevention, you can also get it through dark leafy greens. You can get it through tofu. You can get it in almonds or other nuts. You can get it in broccoli. And so, therefore, when you're aware and have more confidence in your food choices, it's not so daunting that you need to live in these supplements. Like you can consume them and then they actually work synergistically to be more effective.
mhm, mm.
So I know that was a lot, and somehow we kept it under a half hour, but I just want to say that building a lifestyle is the beauty because it affects that. So not only does building a healthy lifestyle, meaning not on a program, not on a diet, not living under rules of like low carb, high protein, it affects your sleep cycle. It affects aging over 40. It affects your ability for physical activity. It affects your healing. It affects your immune system. It overall affects your quality of life. And that's why the consistency matters so much. And what happens with your weight? Like at that point, I mean, do you see the quality person you are for who you are. Because if you don't, your weight's going to matter that much. If you do, you're going to naturally choose the better options for your health and for your quality of life. And that is a progressive process. Like, you start to learn that and you start to have the confidence and you start to see the growth. And therefore, like, making ripples, make some ripples.
It needs to be on a shirt, make some ripples. That was so good. So good. It was a lot, but it was good. Yeah.
I know, yeah. I
Yeah.
tend
And
to
it's just
overwhelm.
changing the way you're operating in your world, right? Like we're students of a program or have been together, and it's like when you just start to shift the way you look at
Mhm.
things, it's like,
Yeah.
huh. It's like
Mhm.
seeing new colors of the rainbow. You're just like, oh, it's been here all along. Okay.
Well, and that's just it. Like, everybody has a fix, and I'm not picking on anybody. And I know there's good things and there's helpful things, but in reality, when you do the hormone test, when you do the omission of different food groups, when you do that, the basis consensus is decrease stress, decrease junk food, decrease drinking sugary beverages, increase joy, increase physical activity, like get outside, eat fruits and vegetables. Like, we're all kind of saying the same thing. It's just like, unless there's like a secret sale, people are like, I don't know, but it's really like thinking about it as a way of like connecting your self worth, not connecting your health to your weight. Connect your health to your self worth. And
Yeah.
that's where the change really happens, because it's like you can't see real change in like a month's, oh, I've been trying to do this for a month. Like, it's got to be consistent, but not all or nothing. Consistent because you're excited to make that decision, not because you should do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
So
good.
good.
There's so many
Okay.
tangents we could go on, and I'm
I
excited for future
know. I
combos.
can't wait
Yeah.
for next week. Like
Yeah.
always, if you
Yeah.
guys have any topic suggestions or want to hear more on a certain thing we've mentioned, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, if you can share our link to a friend that needed to hear what we had to talk about, or if you want to subscribe to keep listening, that would be amazing, because we got lots more to come.
Oh, we have a comment. Connecting your health to your self-worth. Love that. It's radical self-love. Thank you, Victoria. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Love to see it. Love to see it.
Cheers to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Okay. Everybody get out there, enjoy the journey. Thanks, Shannon. Can't wait to see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.